Welcome, viewers. Here we are. The summer is over, and we're starting Season 3, Episode 61 of the ForensicWeek.com show, brought to you by Forensic IQ Incorporated. I'm your host, Tom Moriello, coming to you from Laurel, Maryland, CEO of Forensic IQ Incorporated and professor at the University of Maryland, Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice in College Park. Tonight, as we begin Season 3, we will reintroduce to you the mission, goal, and vision of our show, introduce our student interns, reflect on some of the issues and activities that have faced the forensic and law enforcement communities. It's been a long, hot summer. Tell you about some of the previous shows that are archived on ForensicWeek.com. So if this is the first time you're watching, we want to make sure you know and understand who we are, what we do, where we've been, and where we're going. ForensicWeek.com is archived on our YouTube channel. And finally, want to share with you some of the already scheduled guests that we have in upcoming episodes. Folks, you're watching ForensicWeek.com, a talk show that features real forensic science by real forensic scientists, educators, law enforcement and legal professionals who find, collect, and examine forensic evidence in the performance of their duties. Broadcast live on your desktop and mobile devices bi-weekly on Thursday evenings, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on www.forensicweek.com. We are a proud member of the Hangout10.com live TV webcast network, which is a series of shows like this one, brought to you live using Google+, a social networking service. Student producer and intern with me this evening is forensic sciences graduate student from the George Washington University, Washington, D.C. Our producer again this year, Laura Pachucki. We have a new intern from the University of Maryland Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice, a Ph.D. candidate who will be a regular on the show and will be reporting stories of interest, Whytnee Silva. You'll learn more about both of them in a few moments. But before we go any further, Laura, why don't you tell our viewers how they can contact us, ask questions, etc.
All right, Tom. Hi, everyone, and thank you for watching ForensicWeek.com. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future shows, you can send us an email at forensicweek@gmail.com. We're trying out some new Hangout features tonight, so please bear with us. Hopefully they will be working. I have a Q&A app on here. If you want to send in a question during the live show, just leave a comment on your YouTube or Google Plus page, and we'll see that, bring that up for you. Hopefully also you can find a website on the right-hand side for Forensic IQ, and you can take a look at that as well. If you are watching the show live and you have any questions, again, use the comment box below. You can watch all archive shows 24/7 online at ForensicWeek.com. You can also find us on Facebook by searching the ForensicWeek.com show. And that's all. Thanks. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Laura. As you heard me just say a few minutes ago, we are now going to be broadcasting bi-weekly. For the first 2 seasons, we were running shows every single week, and that was a little bit difficult. It's hard sometimes to get guests to be scheduled, and you know, a lot of my staff, like Laura, are taking classes, etc. So we decided to make it bi-weekly. We think that'll be better. It'll give us a few more days to prepare for the show and make sure that we get the best guests we have. So starting tonight, it will be bi-weekly. Our next show will be on the 18th of this month. Now, I mentioned to you that we have a mission, goal, and vision statement. And I want to make sure you understand what they are, because it'll help you to understand our show. This is not network television. This is live. We intend to have guests come in here and talk about real forensic science, in what the science is, what kind of information can be obtained, etc. Our mission is to present real forensic-related content by real forensic professionals, and we go worldwide to find those professionals. Our goal is to broadcast topics of interest valued by an international viewership. And I want to highlight international. We have talked to, we've had guests, and we know we have viewers from England, Africa, Canada, Australia. Those are countries that we have actually had people on the show talking to us. So it's a worldwide viewership. Our vision, well-informed practitioners. We have a lot of police officers, forensic scientists, attorneys who are watching the show. What we're trying to do for you is to present information that will help you on your cases, better understand how forensics, criminology, counterintelligence topics can help you in your profession. Mentor students. One of the most important things I think Forensic Week does is it helps students decide what they want to do in their careers. We have a lot of high school students and college students who are watching this show because they're interested in forensics, they're interested in criminal justice, but they're not sure why. They're not sure what area. They don't understand what they need to do to prepare for their careers. So our vision is well-informed practitioners and mentored students, and the last one is enlightened jury pools. And when I say enlightened jury pools, I mean the general public. Any one of you watching this show, if you're not in the career field, you might say, okay, I'm interested in watching this because I'm just interested in forensic science. Well, ladies and gentlemen, one day you may get the mail and all of a sudden you find out that your county is asking you to be on a jury. And the more informed you are, the better jury you will be. So one of our visions is that we can help the general public who watch the show better understand the criminal justice system, understand forensics, what it really is, because I hate to say it, and it's not, I don't want to criticize network and cable television, but the reality is that I got to tell you, their job is not to educate you, their job is to entertain you, and they do that really well. We would like to think that we're entertaining you, because if we're not entertaining you to some extent on Forensic Week, then you're not gonna listen. But our real focus is to educate. It's important that that you truly get the facts on those things. So our mission: real forensic related content by real forensic professionals. Our goal: to broadcast topics of interest valued in an international viewership, and our vision again: well-informed practitioners, mentored students, and enlightened jury pools. Now, we began Forensic Week long before Laura and Whytnee were even involved in the show. It was November 29, 2012. That was episode 1. We had our first producer was Tim Fromm. Tim Fromm was there he is right there, was a University of Maryland student. He was a former student of mine, and he became the producer for the first season. Great guy, smart. He graduated in the spring of 2011, and within weeks after he graduated, he got his job working as a contractor, working for the federal government as a fingerprint technician. So he's been working in the fingerprint field since he graduated. I talked to him recently. He's doing really well, done some interesting stuff, but unfortunately when he started the job, he started working, he got the reality of real work. He was working from like 3 in the afternoon to 11 or 12 at night, so that's why he had to step down as producer. The next student I'd like to mention is Mark Lombard. Mark Lombard was an intern, and he was a reporter during the 2012-2013 season. He just recently got hired by Uniform Division of Secret Service. Really excited. And I'm excited for him. He's right now down at FLETC. FLETC is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center down in Glencoe, Georgia. You know, I want to mention something. Some of you who are starting to get jobs, you know, you might be lucky enough to be applying to multiple jobs, and eventually you might get in a position where you're actually being offered jobs from multiple agencies, and you got to try to decide which one should I pick. Sometimes you get offered a job by the one that is your second choice, not your first choice. And what should you do? Bottom line is, you want to make sure you have a job. That's the most important thing. Eventually, when the organization that offers you a job that you want, that's the one you need to go to. Mark had that experience. He got offered a job by multiple agencies, and ultimately the Uniform Division came through in a timely manner, and he was able to get it. He found out about the job on a Friday, and that following Thursday, he was driving down to Glencoe, Georgia, and he'll be down there for, I'm not sure, I think it's at least 4 months, 5 months before he comes back. So congratulations to Mark, a great individual, a great student, did a lot to help us. He co-produced some of our shows. Noel Andres, he was in the last season, the 2013-2014 season. He was a student of mine. He also, not only was an intern on the show, but he also helped develop one of the 3 crime scenes, full-size crime scenes that I now have at the university for my class. Smart student, very focused. He's from Prince George's County, Maryland, and that's the police department that he was interested in, and that's the police department that chose him. So he is now in the police academy for Prince George's County Police, a very large and very professional police department right outside of the northeast side of Washington, D.C. So those are some of our students who have worked on ForensicWeek.com. We'd like to think that as they listen to the show that they gain the knowledge of our guests, and I know they have. So we've had 61 shows. This is 62. We've had over almost 44,000 views. This summer, while we were taking the summer off, we had over 5,000 views. So we have people who are watching our shows. We have a lot of students who are now required to watch our shows as part of the curriculum of their courses. I've gotten emails from professors around the country saying, hey, I don't know a lot about forensic anthropology. I see you did a show on forensic anthropology, so I've now integrated that into my course. So if you are a professor and you're listening, that's something to think about. As we mentioned, we use Google+. Right after the show is done, within 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes it's faster, sometimes a little slower, the recording of the show gets posted on our YouTube channel for you to see at any time. Laura, I'd like you to tell them a little bit more about asking questions when the show is live. Where exactly do they see where they can text a question?
Right. So if you're watching the show live on either Google Plus or on our YouTube channel, which is at forensicweek.com, you can leave a comment right below there in the comment section, and we will actually see that. We get a notification about it, and I can bring it up on the screen so that I can ask Tom for you or any of our guests during the show.
And like I always tell my students, when I'm giving a lecture, students tend to have really good questions, and what they do is they go home and they text me the question. And I'd say, Jesus, I would have really liked that question when I was talking, and sometimes we get questions after the show that would really have been good to ask the guest live so we can hear their response. So we encourage you to do that if you can, and if not, do it afterwards, and we will certainly respond. Now, yes, Laura.
Tom, I just want to make sure that you mentioned Derek as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know why? Derek, if you're listening, I did not forget you. Well, yes, I did forget you, and thank you, Laura, because it's not on my thing. Derek Wong was the co-producer with Laura last season. Derek he was an undergraduate student in biology at the University of Maryland. He took my forensics course. Then he was a graduate student at Stevenson University in Owen Mills in Baltimore County, Maryland. And he got his master's degree in forensic studies, and within weeks again after graduating, he got a job with the Baltimore City Police Crime Lab, and he is now an evidence technician. Now, long term, I think Derek, wants to be a scientist in the laboratory, but they were hiring evidence technicians They needed them right away, so he took that job. So I think it's going to be better for him. He is now working crime scenes, so he's going to see the beginning of the whole process in the reality of it. And, you know, he's not going to be doing mock crime scenes. He'll be responding to real crime scenes, seeing you know, how they're approached, seeing how what the investigator's doing and how they're doing it, and how it relates to proving beyond a reasonable doubt the offense. And then eventually he'll either move into the lab at Baltimore City Crime Lab or move on to another agency, whatever. But we want to congratulate him, one, for getting his master's degree, and two, for landing that job at Baltimore City. Congratulations, Derek. Okay, now Laura, let's, you know, you've never really done this, and I want, and before we introduce our newest intern, Whytnee, Laura, tell the viewers a little bit about who you are, where you go to school, what the program is, you know, why you chose GW, and some of the courses you're taking, and where you would like to end up.
Alrighty. So I go to George Washington University in Washington, D.C. The campus I go to is actually our Mount Vernon campus, which isn't anywhere near Mount Vernon, but it's really nice and close for me to get to. We have different programs in the Forensic Science Department. We have a Master of Forensic Science in Forensic Chemistry, Forensic Molecular Biology, or Forensic Toxicology, the Master of Science in Crime Scene Investigation, and a Graduate Certificate Program in Forensic Investigation. Those two, the Crime Scene Investigation and the Forensic Investigation, only a bachelor's degree is required from an accredited institution. And then we have a Master of Science in High Technology Crime Investigation, which that's offered in Arlington, Virginia, from like a satellite campus, I believe. So I chose the crime scene investigation major because I do not have a background in any science. I actually got my undergrad in digital media arts from Duquesne University. I originally went to Duquesne for a forensic science major and to do that as my career, and then somewhere along the way, freshman year, I decided I'd rather do like photoshopping all the time. And then, you know, about 3 years after graduating, I decided, no, I really want to do forensic science. So here I am at grad school. The program is great. It's designed for working professionals, so a lot of the courses are at night. That's great because I do work full-time during the day, Monday through Friday. So the classes are Monday through Thursday, once a week classes. The Washington, D.C. location is great for me because it's an easy drive, and the location provides students with opportunities to interact with federal, state, and local agencies. All of my professors have been retired law enforcement or are working professionals in agencies such as the FBI, ATF, a forensic pathologist, etc. And so, like I said, I'm pursuing my Master of Science in Crime Scene Investigation, and I'll be graduating in the spring. I've taken courses such as Forensic Photography, MDI, Pathology, and Science of Fingerprints, and I hope to use my bachelor's in Digital Media Arts towards a career in Forensic Photography or Crime Scene Reconstruction.
So what are you going to do with all that? What kind of a job are you going to be looking for?
Well, I'm hoping to do forensic photography or crime scene reconstruction, although my teacher the other night kind of said it's hard to get a job in crime scene investigation. So I think, I mean, I've come to the realization that I'm probably going to have to start in law enforcement and work my way up, but I'm really hoping to get into, you know, the whole reconstruction using my background to help me with that.
Are you taking a course with Professor Ted Robinson?
I am this semester. I'm taking my final course with Professor Robinson. It's Crime Scene Investigations 2. So the first class CSI 1 was a lot of like fingerprint developing and such, and we used computer programs for crime scene reconstruction. Now the class is more about 2D, 3D impressions and stuff like that.
Okay, very good. So for our students who are listening for the first time, if you've listened to previous shows, you've heard me say this before, really important. If you want to be a forensic scientist, if you want to work in the laboratory, if in many cases, a lot of police departments are requiring a science degree to even be an evidence technician, like Derek is, then you need to focus on the sciences. So the faster you realize that, the better you're going to be. Right? If you're more interested in the investigative part of it, for example, understanding science so you can be a better investigator, then you focus more towards law enforcement. So if you want to do something like photography or whatever, I think you said it, Laura, you really might have to start in law enforcement and then get an assignment in those other things. And that's just that's where the system is right now. Okay, very good. Well, that's the most we've heard from Laura Pachucki for a whole year, and I want to thank you that. And I want to thank Laura. Laura, you know, she works full time. She's a graduate student. She's a mom, and I really appreciate the time and effort that she puts in the show. You know, last year when I was looking for a producer, she raised her hand and she said, "I can do that," and she's done a great job. So thank you. Whytnee Silva. So Whitney's been sitting there saying, I'm dying to talk. When is he going to shut up? I want to say something. Ladies and gentlemen, I met this young lady last week. I was attending the University of Maryland Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice Ph.D. student orientation luncheon, and I was there because it was a free lunch, and I got a chance to meet not only our new PhD candidates, but others that have been already in the program. And that's where Whytnee came up to me, just like kind of Laura did, and said, hey, look, I want to be involved with your show. And so we've got Whytnee Silva right here, and she is one of our PhD candidates in the program that is the #1 criminal justice PhD program in the country. Not because I said it, it's because it's been said many times by, what's that, the magazine that does that?
That would be U.S. News and World Report.
Absolutely, I knew you said it. Whytnee, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can talk a little bit about the spot that you're going to be doing for us in Forensic Week.
Well, I also got into criminology in kind of a backwards way. I actually started off as a pharmacy major in undergrad, and I think Pharmacy. Pharmacy, like drugs. Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I started off as a pharmacy major, and I think I lasted a little over 2 days in those classes before I realized, okay, I need to be rotating classes. My classes don't need to be rotating me. So I wanted to have more of a social life, and I decided, okay, maybe I can be a lawyer instead. And I began to take up political science. And that was cool for a while until I took my first sociology class. And that day, I changed my major again, and I said, okay, you know what, I got it this time. So I'm happy in sociology, and then I realized, okay, now I want to live off campus. And my scholarship didn't cover that, and so me being me, for some reason, decided that I was going to go to the Army and be a JAG. And so I joined ROTC, and again, I think I lasted all of a week. And I was walking down the hall one day in my sociology building, and I see this flyer for NIMH research program. And I didn't know it was paid. I didn't really know what research was, but I was just like, oh, this seems cool. And I went to a meeting, and I landed an interview. And at the interview, the woman was like a, hippie, peaceful person, and she said, well, if we were to pay you every month, would you consider not going to the military? And I said, yeah, but why would you pay me? And she's like, oh, you didn't know that this was for a fellowship? And I'm like, fellowship? No, I just wanted to do some research, whatever that is. And so, long story short, I ended up becoming part of that program. And as a requirement, I had to attend 2 summers worth of research programs. In my first summer, I stayed at my alma mater, Hampton University in Virginia, In the second summer, I was accepted to go study at Princeton. And while at Princeton, I got a chance to conduct my first independent research project with Diva Pager, who's known for her landmark study on criminal records and resumes in the job search. And so I did some research on crime news media and wrote an article about that. And I also learned while I was there how to apply and be a competitive candidate for graduate programs that pay you to go to grad school. And so once I learned the ins and outs, I began to study for the GRE, you know, and got some applications out there. And Maryland remembered me from applying to their summer program, and they said, okay, well, you chose Princeton over us for that, so now we're going to tell you we have this fellowship that you should consider. And I said, okay, I'm from PG County, I don't want to go back to PG County, and I applied to 10 graduate schools, and I said the only way I'm going to Maryland is if I get that fellowship. And so, needless to say, I heard back with funding from all 9 schools, and then Maryland hits me about 2 months after everyone else, like, hey, do you want to come here? And I'm like, yes. And so it had to be the best decision I made. And I came in as a juvenile delinquency researcher and began working on a gangs project out of Philadelphia. And I realized that I needed to be more engaged, more hands-on. And so now I'm teaching, and I'll be doing race and crime, a 300-level course in the winter. And that's aligned with my research interests in race and crime and the history of crime. And so ultimately, you know, I want to go into academia, continue my research in those areas. Maybe I can get a good book out of all this, I don't know, and continue to do things like this, like hosting shows and corresponding for major news outlets.
You had mentioned that one of the reasons why you wanted to be part of the show is because when you graduate and get your PhD, you'd like to do some on-camera stuff. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, actually, always, for some reason, I just thought that I was going to have my own show. And it's funny because the show came first and the ideas came later. And so it's like, okay, now that I'm a researcher and crime is always happening and people, for some reason, like hearing about it, I have an excuse to have a show. And so here I am. And, yeah, hopefully I can get on, you know, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. If you're out there listening, I'm here.
Okay, so you're every time you're on our show, you're auditioning for the networks, right?
Yes, I have to check and make sure I'm camera ready.
Okay. You know, I want to make sure that our viewers, especially student viewers, know the difference between, they hear about, this is the Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice, and they might not understand the difference. And we could explain it in 1,000 different ways, but I think the simplest way is criminology is the study of the causation of crime, why people commit crime. And criminology is really a combination of sociology and psychology, sometimes looking at criminal behavior by groups, and then sometimes it's looking at criminal behavior by individuals. So criminology is crime causation, concerned about, you know, how do we prevent crime. Corrections, probation, parole. Criminal justice normally associates more with practitioners in law enforcement. A lot of people who want to go to law school and be a criminal lawyer tend to get a degree in criminal justice, where the courses are more focused on criminal law, criminal procedure, criminal investigation, forensic science, like my course. So most of my students focus more on the criminal justice side. So Whytnee is focused on crime causation, looking at behavior. What causes that to happen? Now, I got to tell viewers, I was a criminology major in undergraduate school, and during that time I said, how is this going to help me be a better police officer? I was interested in law enforcement, but it just so happened my program was a criminology program, and I didn't know the difference back then. And I got to tell you, as an investigator, all of the research and all I learned about crime causation and what causes people to tick, what causes various groups to be involved in crime, really helped me as an investigator. So I appreciated that more later on when I became a practitioner. Now, Whytnee, you're going to be doing a segment for us, and I asked you to, I said, come up with a name for this segment, and you came up with it. And Laura, if you could kind of put that up, it's going to be called In Real Life. And Tell us a little bit about what the segment is going to be, and then I'd like you to introduce your first topic for us this evening.
Sounds great. Okay, so the reason why I chose the name In Real Life is because, like Tom said, a lot of what I do as a criminologist is very abstract. So we're talking about theories, we're playing with numbers, but we very seldom deal with what's going on right now in real time. And so the tag for the segment is Real News in Real Time, in Real Life. And my first case is going to be one that's drawn a lot of attention in the media, most of which has been sensationalism. And what I wanted to do here, given the theme of the show, is take a more scientific point of view and really just discuss the evidence. And if you've been following any news outlet lately, you've heard about the Mike Brown case. And Michael Brown was an 18-year-old youth who got shot down in broad daylight by a police officer who's now been identified as Darren Wilson. And so what we're going to do today is pretty much take this case play by play. And when I say play by play, I don't mean the protests that are going on. I don't mean all the political attention the case has gotten. I mean, what is the available evidence that we have gotten so far? And you might hear me say alleged sometimes because we have no idea of knowing whether a lot of this stuff actually happened in the first place. And so Laura's going to go to a page that details kind of what happened here day by day. All right? And so we'll start with August 9th. On August 9th, the initial reports of the shooting emerged after an alleged robbery of a Quick Trip convenience store. Later, 18-year-old Michael Brown is shot to death while walking down the street with his friend as a result of an encounter with an officer who's now been identified as Darren Wilson. So apparently, these gunshots, there were 6 total, were inadvertently recorded during a video chat like this one. So, Tom, given your experience in forensics, what do you think of using a video chat as evidence of gunshots?
Well, one of the things I'm going to say, what do I think? Right now, all we've got is what the media has chosen to give us, because I would say that everything that you have on this slide is information from the media, correct?
Yes.
All right. So the point I want to make, especially to the viewers, is that, you know, when we have opinions, it's based on the opinions that the media has allowed us to have. So now, okay, so these shots. Allegedly, some company has confirmed that the noises on that video chat, in fact, were guns. Now, okay, does that prove that they were the guns in question? You know, were there other guns? So trying to use that as evidence in this case, I think, is not a good idea. You know, I really, I'm not sure what it's going to prove at this point in time. So unless I have more information in you know, exactly where, you know, where was the person, where was it recorded, and allegedly they are gunshots. How do we know that? Can we prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a noise in a recording is in fact a gunshot and not something else? Because if I was working for the defense, I would immediately go and say, okay, is it possible that it's something else? Could it be something other than a gunshot? And if a scientist comes and says, well, yeah, it could be this, this, and this, then it gets thrown out. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. At this point in time, I'm not looking at that as a piece of evidence that's going to be really helpful, but we'll see.
And I totally agree. What we know is that the burden of proof is on the prosecution, so it's up to them to prove, not up to the defense to prove that these shots weren't, you know, the ones that led to Mike Brown's death. And also, given this day and age with all the things you can do with the media, you know, who's to say that this video wasn't manipulated in some way? So now, August 10th, the next day, Police Chief Joe Belmar claims that Brown physically assaulted the officer, resulting in a struggle between the two parties. And according to Belmar, Brown reached for the officer's gun, prompting him to fire a series of gunshots inside and outside of the police vehicle. So far, Tom, have you noticed anything unusual about this investigation, about the type of information that's been released to the media? Like, is there anything that's kind of like striking you as strange here?
What strikes me, I wouldn't use the word strange, what strikes me is if in fact that really happened, then there should be some significant physical trace evidence between the victim and the police officer. Of course, the media is not talking about that because they probably have no knowledge of that. But, you know, instead of worrying about whether there was a witness, 50 yards down the street that might have seen something, if in fact there was contact between those two, then there should be some type of trace evidence between them. DNA or whatever the case, hairs, fibers from each other's clothing, trauma consistent with what they said happened. So that's what they should be looking for to try to confirm whether there was some type of contact. Because if I remember correctly from listening to the video interviews of the gentleman that was with Brown, I'm not sure. I don't think he says that exact type of activity happened. Is that correct?
Well, he doesn't say that, but what happened, what actually came out later, during the 911 call, someone's heard in the background bragging like, oh yeah, Mike really stood up to that officer, man. Did you see what he did? And it kind of, contradicts the story that Mike Brown was just, hanging out, not bothering anyone. So like you said, we weren't there. We don't know what happened. Darren Wilson has yet to say anything.
My biggest concern is that this is going to be another O.J. Simpson type case where we're no longer going to be looking at the evidence to prove or disprove a crime occurred. We're going to focus on issues in reference to bias, race issues, and before you know it, we're going to get a jury pool who is only going to be listening to certain things. I don't know what happened, and I just hope that they can allow forensic evidence not to be lost, because that's one of the things that happened in the O.J. Simpson case. There was forensic evidence that was totally eliminated or ignored because they didn't think it was necessary. And I try to impress upon police officers when I'm in training that no piece of evidence should be ignored. All evidence should be collected. All evidence should be presented to the prosecution to do a better job of finding that. So I'm not sure if we're ever going to find out the true facts because he said, she said, and but I hope we can. I think there's multiple investigations going on. The FBI is going to be investigating civil rights violations in reference to the approach of the police. Do the police have do they tend to be biased in the performance of their duties? In reference to who's arrested and who's not arrested. One of the most significant powers that a police officer has is discretion. When to arrest and when not to arrest, and how are they using that power of discretion? Are they using it fairly? And that's where the civil rights violations come in. So the FBI is going to be looking at that. Now that is separate from the case. So again, what's going to happen is the media is focused on what they think is going to be more compelling for people to listen to, because again, all they're interested in is what can I say that's going to get people to want to hear what we want to present, and that's a bias I have against the media, unfortunately.
Well, a lot of people speak out about the dangers of a 24-hour news cycle. When you have to provide ongoing content to an audience whose interests are forever fleeting, it gets kind of difficult to keep the integrity. Especially in situations like this that attract, national attention because of race issues. Right. So like you said, the FBI announces their parallel investigation on the 11th, and the next day on August 12th, a preliminary autopsy released by St. Louis County Medical Examiner's Office found that Michael Brown was shot 6 times from the front and had marijuana in his system. Mary Case, the examiner in this case, declined to comment for specifics, and we can respect her for that. But his friend Dorian Johnson, who apparently was an eyewitness to the incident, told the reporter that at the time of the shooting, Brown had his hands in the air and was unarmed. And other reports have said he was actually running away. And so what we see is that the preliminary autopsy is not consistent with him facing backward. So that's some evidence there. Then the next day on the 13th, the Justice Department, like you said, opens this federal civil rights investigation of this shooting. And the St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office, the same day, discloses Michael Brown's clean criminal history. And again, Tom, what do the criminal or disciplinary records of Michael Brown or Darren Wilson, the officer, imply? Is this evidence, or are these asides?
Is it evidence for a criminal case? No. I mean that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. He could have just got out of prison after being convicted for first-degree murder, and he was now out free. That doesn't mean he can't be a victim of a crime. So, but again, who's really focused on this? Is it the prosecution, or is it the media? And the media sometimes really blows that up. So, by the way, I did want to mention in reference to the 6 shots on Brown. Forensically, they might be able to. Well, they should be able to look at the trajectory of each one of those entrance wounds. If in fact any one of them was shot at close range, because it's my understanding that one of them was supposed to be at close range.
Yes.
Correct.
And apparently he also would have survived them all, besides the one that shot him in the head. Mm-hmm.
So one of the things they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, what does the police officer say? What does the witness say? And what does the forensic evidence show? If the forensic evidence shows that what the police officer said could have happened and what the witness said could have happened, then the forensic evidence doesn't really help. Let me give you an example. My nephew, my 12-year-old nephew, was accidentally killed by his best friend when they were playing around with his best friend's mother's handgun. All right? So the question is, okay, was this a crime? Was this, first-degree murder, or was this just an accident by the kid? So one of the things they did is they interviewed the kid and said, okay, what did you do? When did you find the gun? Why did it go off? And he said, I opened it up. I shook out the rounds. I thought they were all out. I closed it. I started pointing it at Brian, which was my nephew. 3 times it went off, and it just capped off, and then the 3rd time a bullet was in there. Well, the forensic evidence simply said, yes, what you said, Brian was 6 feet away. The forensic evidence showed that, yes, what you said could have happened. Doesn't mean it did happen that way, but it simply means the forensic evidence establishes that what you said is viable. That's all, okay? So everybody thinks that forensic evidence is the panacea for an investigation, and it isn't. Why do they think that? Because every darn show on network and cable TV that has to do with forensic science is the panacea for it. First of all, they pick their shows, and I get calls by production companies from Hollywood all the time looking for angles on certain cases, and they're only looking for an angle that, sensationalizes forensics or whatever. Not to say that forensic hasn't done some amazing things, but it's not as amazing as the networks look at. I'm looking at the time, so we're going to have to rush. One thing I wanted to mention before I leave you, Whytnee, you talked about the police officers who are now wearing cameras, and what I thought about that. Well,
yes, what do you think about that?
I personally think it's great. And I'll tell you why. When I was chief of polygraph, all the polygraph tests that are done by the federal government are required to be recorded from the very in fact that the recording, so nobody can forget to turn it on and turn it off. It's always on, And every time we have an allegation from somebody saying, "Hey, the investigator did this, the polygrapher, he said this to me, he called me that," we go back to the recording, and more times than not, it shows that the examiner didn't do anything wrong. So the police officer, just like my investigators and polygraph examiners, they know that that thing is recording, and they behave, So I believe that will help. It'll help the police officers to do the right thing.
So you think
And
the cameras are a good deterrent?
But I think it can be a deterrent for things like this case right here. You know, they're already doing it. They're already doing it for felony stops. You know, the most police cruisers now around the country, they have a camera. As soon as the officer gets out of the car, that camera is recording the car in front of them and everything else. And it's really cool. So I think it's good. I don't know how many things a police officer can carry on themselves. Yeah, that's kind of crazy, you know. How much can they possibly carry between guns and handcuffs and all the different kinds of things? Now we're asking them to wear a camera. Plus, do they have to put a big sign on themselves? If you come near me within 10 feet, you are being recorded. You know, because you cannot record somebody without them knowing it. So that's going to be kind of interesting. I'm going to have to cut you short, but let's make sure in future in real life spots that we continue to watch this case like other cases. And I think this is going to be great. And Whytnee, we're really happy to have you with us in forensicweek.com. We really do. Thank you for being part of the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. For those of you who are new members of the show who've never seen us before, let's just reflect a little bit about who we've had in the past so you know what to expect. For example, our second show, we had Maryland London, who is a forensic anthropologist. In fact, this summer, she ran a 3-week forensic summer camp for high school students at the University of Maryland. So Maryland London, this is episode 2, so if you want to learn about forensic anthropology, go to episode 2. Maryland is phenomenal. There's only about 200 plus forensic anthropologists in the whole country, and she's one of them. She ran a great program for high school students, 3 weeks long. She brought them to my crime lab, so I had them for a few hours. Also, Dr. Cassie Thompson at the University of Maryland, who is the director of the undergraduate research and internship program for the College of Computer, Mathematical, and Natural Sciences. She runs 2 Jumpstart programs, one for middle school students interested in forensic sciences and one 1-week program for high school students. So we had 2 separate programs at the University of Maryland this summer for those of you in high school and middle school who are interested in forensic sciences. So if you're interested next summer, look into Dr. Cassie Thompson's program or Maryland London's program in the Department of Anthropology, and you might be part of that program. One more, I spoke over at Georgetown University this summer. Dr. B. Simon Zakari, who used to teach at the University of Maryland, a true friend of mine and colleague. She ran a program for high school students. These high school students came from all over the country. There were over 100 of them, and they were here for 1 week. And I spoke on death investigation, and they got a chance to visit some of the crime labs in Washington. Great program. So there's a lot of programs out there for those of you who are interested in learning more. And I tell you that because while you're in high school, the more you can learn and understand about an area that you might be interested in, the better. So, you know, so you don't jump around too much. I know it's okay to jump around. Whytnee, you did it a lot. You know, it's not unusual to start a major and go to another major, but the faster you focus on a particular area, the better it is going to be for you, and the faster you're going to get out and get that degree. Episode 3, Dr. Priya Banerjee. Dr. Banerjee is a former student of mine. She was an undergraduate student. She majored in criminal justice and microbiology. She ended up going to medical school, and then she continued medical school in the area of pathology. She is now assistant medical examiner for the state of Rhode Island. She did a show on general forensic pathology in the medical examiner. That was episode 3, and then we had her come back in episode 21, 29, and 30. Why did she come back? Because I put it together with 2 other guests, John Paolucci and Joe Giacalone, both retired homicide investigators from New York City PD. Joe is a specialist in cold case homicide type cases, and John ran the crime scene unit for New York City PD. He was responsible for all the DNA evidence that came in to decide whether it was appropriate to be analyzed, etc. John and Joe both are phenomenal people, and so I said, okay, I'm going to get two practitioners who've done homicide investigations, cold cases, and I'm going to put them together with a medical examiner, and we had 3 additional shows. So if you're really interested in learning more about cold case investigation, death investigation, the medical examiner, the association with the medical examiner and investigators, go to episode 21, 29, and 30, and you will be you'll really enjoy those shows. Then I had Dr. Jim Adcock. He is the director for the Center for the Resolution of Unresolved Crime. There's a whole lot of unresolved crime there, especially homicides. And we did a show, that was episode 56. In fact, I had Joe Giacalone and John Paolucci again on that show, and that was a great show. Trying to talk about, how can we help investigators to better resolve crime. And the most looked at show that we've done of the 61 shows, the best one was, not the best one, but the most viewed was number 11, and that was with special FBI agent Bob Hilland. Bob did a show on solving serial murders. Specifically, he worked on a serial murder case of a John Smith. That was his real name, John Smith. And it was believed that he has killed several of his former wives. He's been convicted for one. Bob has been still trying to find the body of another one of the wives. In fact, he sent me an email 4 months ago and says, Tom, we think we know where the body is. As soon as the weather gets better, because he actually sent me this email in the wintertime, we're going to start digging. Well, I talked to him yesterday. They dug, and they still didn't find that body. So they're still looking for another body that this John Silva was involved with. But that show, which is episode 11, was a great show. People really enjoyed it. My God, we had over 20,000 views of that show. So you might want to watch that one. Then episode 26, Animal and Agricultural Forensic Services. I met a colleague from the American Academy of Forensic Science named Dr. Gary Pizzillo from Iowa. I said, Gary, what do you do? He's a PhD, and he specializes in animal nutrition. That was he had a company. Well, he has a company that makes animal foods that don't make animals sick, that have the right ingredients, etc. While he was involved, he found out that a lot of animals were dying on farms, and many times it was because of the food that they were eating. Well, anyways, make a long story short, we did a show with him, and that was show 26. He actually, in fact, not too long before he did the show, he had autopsied over 300 pigs, because all 300 had died from one farm, and they wanted to know why. And he did autopsies on all of them to find the common denominator. So really a cool guy, great show. That was 26. We also found that there was a lot of forensic science being used in animal cruelty cases. The ASPCA has a whole forensic science unit. So if you're interested in the investigation of animal cruelty and what's being done and what crimes are involved, we had 2 extra shows. Show 54 with Dr. Randall Lockwood from the ASPCA, and then we had a forensic vet who was involved in forensic veterinary medicine. That was Dr. Jody Gurdon. That was episode 57. So we have 3 shows, 26, 54, and 57, that deals with forensic science services for animals and animal cruelty. Let's continue. Everybody remembers the Casey Anthony case. Well, there were 2 significant people involved, professionals involved. One was a forensic botanist. People say, there's such thing as a forensic botanist. They look at vegetation. If you remember, there was some vegetation found in the trunk of Casey Anthony, and the prosecution was trying to say that there was something in the trunk that associated with vegetation. It was where Casey Anthony's daughter was found, where the body was found. And anyways, Dr. Jane Bach, a forensic botanist, was testified in that case for the defense to show that what they were saying was just not correct. And as you all know, Casey Anthony was found not guilty. That doesn't mean she didn't do it. It simply means that she was found not guilty. Remember, our criminal system is simply wants to know whether the state has evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to prove that a crime was committed and that a certain person or persons committed the crime. So anyways, we had her. She did a great show, and she recommended one of the defense attorneys in the Casey Anthony case, Dorothy Sims. Dorothy Sims is an expert in junk science, in developing testimony or developing cross-examination of scientists who are presenting evidence that sometimes is not real science. And she was one of the defense attorneys in there. So we did a show called Junk Science. It's show 52. Dorothy Sims, great show. And those of you who are in forensic science, you need to listen to what she has to say. She has respect for the forensic sciences, but she also says that many, many times she has witnessed and examined people testifying to something that is not scientific based. And so that's a good show. Show 51, in February of this year, the American Academy of Forensic Sciences had their meetings in Seattle, and what we were able to do is do a live show because they had 11 universities with forensic science programs talk about their programs. We interviewed them live. So we've had a lot of interesting shows. One last one I want to mention to you in the interest of time, because we only have 2 more minutes, is show 57. We had Jim Petro and his wife Nancy. They wrote a book called False Justice, 8 Myths That Convict the Innocent. And by the way, this is their second edition of that book. It just came out this month. It's a great book. Ladies and gentlemen, we are finding, just like Jim and Nancy have found, that many people are being convicted who are innocent, who are absolutely innocent. And later on, in fact, just in the news yesterday, somebody who spent 30 years in prison for a homicide and rape that he did not commit. DNA finally showed that he and his stepbrother were not involved. Were not involved, and he spent his stepbrother spent 30 years in prison. And what's sad is when DNA or some forensic evidence proves that somebody who was convicted, that was a miscarriage of justice, sometimes the prosecution is not willing to accept that and admit it. I liken that to the Catholics with Catholic priests. How many Catholic priests have to be found to be involved in committing sexual-related crimes before they finally realize, hey, yeah, we've got a problem? The prosecution, the state, needs to recognize that when evidence can show that we made a mistake, they just have to realize that and accept that. Those were cases we had, and we're going to continue to have some great speakers. On the 18th, we had a forensic accounting expert, Daryl Darrell. I'm sorry, and he is a forensic accountant. We had him on episode 31. He's coming back on the 18th in 2 weeks to talk about forensic lexicology. Forensic lexicology. What is that? I said to him, I never heard of it. He said, it's the study of words. He says, you know, they think forensic accountants only focus on numbers, you know, fraud and various crimes that associate with numbers and money. But one of the things that they're looking at is what people say in words. And so forensic lexicology is a branch of linguistics concerned with the significance and application of words. So in 2 weeks, we're going to learn how we can evaluate what people say and write and determine the authenticity of the document, and also determine whether a certain person may have been involved in something that has been documented. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the time is up. And I'm really excited about session 3 for a number of reasons. Why? Because we have a lot of great guests that are going to be coming back this fall. We have Whytnee Silva, who's joined us, and I appreciate that. We have Laura back here. And if any of you have an area that you're interested in, you want us to cover, send us an email, make a comment, tell us what the science is, or if you know somebody specific, and we'll do that. I hope that this has been helpful for you. Please tell your friends to listen in. Remember, those shows are always there for you to watch. And I look forward to seeing you on the 18th. Whytnee, thank you. Laura, thank you.
Thank you.